I never believed in demons until I found those strange symbols carved into his basement wall. By then, it was too late. The girl in his photos wasn't his ex-wife. She's been dead for centuries, and now I'm the next meal for his eternal bride. Before I tell you how I became an offering to an ancient demon, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Trust me, you'll want to be prepared for what lurks in the shadows of seemingly perfect relationships. My story might just save your life. I still remember the day I met James. It was pouring outside, the kind of storm that makes you believe in omens if you're stupid enough. I was. The coffee shop windows were fogged with condensation, and I was huddled in the corner, my makeup running from the rain, when he offered me his handkerchief. Who even carries handkerchiefs anymore? James did, with his deep blue eyes and that gentle smile that never quite reached those eyes, though I didn't notice that then. "You look like you're having the worst day," he said, his voice warm honey over gravel. "Mind if I make it better?" And God, did he make it better. We talked for hours that day. He knew everything about art, literature, history, things I'd studied my whole life. It felt like finding a kindred spirit in a world of strangers. When he walked me to my car and asked for my number, my heart practically beat out of my chest. The romance that followed was something out of a fairy tale. Flowers delivered to my office for no reason. Weekend trips to hidden beaches I'd never heard of. Candlelit dinners at restaurants that required reservations months in advance. Yet somehow he always got us the best table. He remembered every little thing I mentioned. My favorite childhood book, the perfume my grandmother wore, even the obscure band I'd loved in college. He found a vinyl record of their unreleased tracks. "I have connections," he'd say with that mysterious smile. Of course, there were signs. The way he'd sometimes vanish at night, returning at dawn with no explanation. The strange calls he'd take in another room, speaking in hushed tones, sometimes in languages I couldn't identify. How he never introduced me to friends. "I'm a private person," he'd say. "You're all I need. But when you're drowning in love, red flags just look like decorations at a carnival." My friends tried to warn me. "You barely know him," Megan said, her eyes filled with concern. "No one falls this hard this fast unless they're hiding something." But I was already lost. When James proposed at sunset on the cliffs overlooking the ocean, a vintage ring in his hand that he claimed belonged to his grandmother, I said yes without hesitation. 3 months was fast, but soulmates don't need time, right? That's what I told myself as I slipped the ring on my finger, ignoring how cold the metal felt against my skin, how it seemed to tighten slightly once it was on, how James's smile grew wider, hungrier as he kissed me. "You're mine now," he whispered, "forever." Something in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, I felt special. Chosen. If only I'd asked. Chosen for what? The Victorian house looked like something from a Gothic novel. All weathered stone and intricate woodwork, nestled at the end of a winding driveway, lined with ancient oak trees. "It's been in my family for generations," James said as he carried me across the threshold. I laughed, drunk on happiness and the champagne we'd had after the small civil ceremony. "No family or friends. Just us," he'd insisted. "We don't need anyone else." I fell in love with the house almost as quickly as I'd fallen for James. The library filled with leather-bound books that smelled of secrets. The garden that bloomed with flowers I'd never seen before. Deep purple and midnight blue open only at dusk. But there was one place James kept locked. The basement. "Just storage," he said dismissively when I asked. "Old family heirlooms, nothing interesting." The way his jaw tightened told me not to press further. It was during my 3rd week there when I found the photographs. James was away on one of his frequent business trips. Something to do with antiquities, though he never shared details. I was organizing his study, wanting to surprise him, when I discovered a hidden compartment in his desk. Inside was a small wooden box containing sepia-toned photographs of a woman. My breath caught. She could have been my twin. The same heart-shaped face, the same wide-set eyes. Even the birthmark at the corner of her mouth, identical to mine. When James returned, I showed him the photos with trembling hands. His face went blank before softening into sadness. "My wife," he said quietly. "She died many years ago. A tragic accident." The resemblance between us was just coincidence, he insisted. I wanted to believe him. Needed to. But something cold settled in my stomach that night and never left. The house began to speak to me after that, not with words, with sensations. Whispers that drifted through the hallways at 3 a.m., too faint to make out but distinctly feminine. Objects that weren't where I'd left them. My hairbrush moved to the other side of the vanity. My slippers turned to face the door instead of the bed. Once I swore I saw someone in the garden, a woman in white, watching me through the kitchen window. When I blinked, she was gone. I started waking with unexplained bruises, small ones at first, fingertip marks on my wrists, as though someone had grabbed me in my sleep, then larger ones across my back, my thighs. "You must be sleepwalking," James suggested, concern in his voice as he gently applied arnica cream. "The house is old. It's easy to bump into things in the dark." James became increasingly protective, insisting I not go into town alone. He installed a new security system, though it felt more like it was keeping me in than keeping others out. His sweet attentiveness took on a possessive edge. He called constantly when away, asking specific questions about what I was doing, where in the house I was. The basement door gained a new, heavier lock. One night I heard James talking downstairs long after midnight. I crept down the grand staircase, following his voice to the locked basement door. "She's perfect," I heard him say, his tone reverent in a way he'd never used with me. "Just like you wanted. The resemblance is uncanny." Silence followed, as though he was listening to someone respond, but I heard no other voice. "Soon," he promised, "on the blood moon. Everything will be ready." The sudden creak of the basement steps sent me fleeing back to our bedroom, heart hammering against my ribs. I knew then I needed to see what was in that basement. Whatever James was hiding, whatever truth lurked beneath our perfect life, I had to know. Even if that truth destroyed everything I thought we had. Even if it destroyed me. My opportunity came 3 days later when James left for what he called an acquisition trip. Something about a rare artifact he needed for his collection. This time his goodbye kiss lingered, his eyes studying my face as if memorizing it. "When I return," he whispered, "everything will change." The way he said it made my skin crawl, but I smiled and waved him off. The perfect, adoring wife. I waited until his car disappeared down the long driveway before beginning my search for the basement key. I tore through his study, our bedroom, the kitchen. Nothing. It was as I stood defeated in the hallway that I noticed something odd about the antique grandfather clock. The pendulum swung with perfect rhythm, but the time was wrong. It always showed exactly midnight, no matter how often James appeared to wind it. My fingers trembled as I opened the glass door. There, hidden behind the pendulum, was a small iron key unlike any modern one I'd ever seen. It looked ancient, the metal dark with age and carved with symbols I didn't recognize. The moment I touched it, the air in the house seemed to shift, like a sigh of relief after holding breath too long. The basement door unlocked with a heavy click that echoed through the silent house. The hinges groaned as if in warning as I pushed it open. No light switch waited at the top of the stairs. Instead, old-fashioned oil lamps lined the stone walls, unlit. I used my phone's flashlight, each step down, creaking beneath my weight. What waited below wasn't storage. It was a shrine. The walls were covered in symbols carved deep into the stone. Some resembled ancient languages I'd studied in college. Others like nothing I'd ever seen. They seemed to shift in my flashlight's beam, rearranging themselves when I wasn't looking directly at them. In the center of the room stood an altar made of dark wood and metal, stained with what I desperately wanted to believe was rust. Around the room were artifacts that belonged in a museum or a nightmare. Ceremonial daggers with jeweled hilts, shrunken objects that looked disturbingly like human hearts preserved in cloudy liquid. Masks made of materials I couldn't identify, shaped into expressions of ecstasy and agony. But it was the bookshelf against the far wall that drew me. Dozens of leather-bound journals, the oldest crumbling with age. I pulled one out at random, opening to a page written in elegant script dated 1872. "Emily joins the others today. She fought harder than most, but in the end, they all submit to her hunger." 50 years pass so quickly now. Soon I must find another who bears the likeness. Lilith grows impatient in her slumber. My hands shaking, I grabbed another journal, newer, 1923. Catherine proved most suitable. The resemblance was striking. Lilith was most pleased with the offering. The ritual completed without complication. My youth returns once more. Journal after journal told the same story. Different names, different eras, but the same fate. Women who looked like me, who were courted, married, and then sacrificed. The most recent journal was dated just 5 years ago. The victim's name was Anna. There was a lock of hair pressed between the pages, the exact shade of mine. In a daze, I moved to a trunk in the corner. Inside were photographs, daguerreotypes, tintypes, Polaroids, digital prints, showing James through the decades, unchanged, eternally youthful. And beside him in each image, a different woman, all with my face, all with eyes that held the same adoring expression I recognized from my own wedding photos. The final piece fell into place when I found a hidden compartment beneath the altar. Inside was an ancient scroll, the parchment yellowed and brittle. The language was archaic, but parts had been translated in the margin in James's handwriting. To sustain the bond with Lilith, bride of darkness, a sacrifice bearing her mortal likeness must be offered every 50th year. Her consumption of the sacrifice renews the pact. The offering must be prepared with the sacred herbs and bound by matrimony. The ritual must be completed under the blood moon. The blood moon, the rare lunar eclipse that would happen in 2 days. I wasn't his wife, I was his offering. Food for whatever creature he served. This Lilith who apparently craved women who looked like her former self. Every item James had ever given me, the special tea he brewed each night, the exotic foods he prepared with secret family spices, the bath salts he insisted would help me sleep. All of it had been preparation, making me suitable for consumption. The sound of a car on the gravel driveway sent ice through my veins. James wasn't due back for days, unless he'd never left at all, unless he'd been watching, waiting for me to discover the truth, like a cat allowing a mouse its final moments of desperate hope before the killing pounce. I scrambled up the basement stairs, the journal clutched against my chest. I had to get out. I had to run. But as I reached the top and turned the knob, I realized with a sickening certainty that the door wouldn't open. Not from this side. Not anymore. Behind me in the darkness below, something moved. "Did you find what you were looking for, my love?" James's voice drifted up from the darkness, familiar yet suddenly alien. I turned slowly, my back pressed against the locked door. He stood halfway up the stairs, his silhouette wrong somehow. Taller, broader, the angles of his face sharper in the dim light. "You weren't supposed to discover this quite yet," he said, his tone almost apologetic. "But perhaps it's better this way, more honest." He climbed another step. "You've read the journals? Then you understand what a gift I'm giving you. Eternity of a sort, to be part of something ancient and magnificent." I clutched the journal tighter. "You're going to kill me." James laughed, the sound echoing strangely off the stone walls. "Death is such a limited concept. You'll be transformed, consumed and yet preserved within her. All those women, they live still in a way. Their essence sustains her, and through her, me." As he spoke, his features began to shift. The handsome face that had charmed me melted away like wax, revealing something older, something inhuman. His eyes darkened to bottomless pits, his smile stretching too wide across a face suddenly gaunt and ancient. "The teas, the oils, the special food. I've been preparing you for months," he said, reaching the top step. "Your body is ready for the merger. On the blood moon, when the veil thins, Lilith will fully awaken, and you, my beautiful bride, will finally serve your true purpose." He grabbed my wrist with impossible strength, his touch burning cold. "It's already beginning. Can't you feel it? The house is sealing itself. The ritual has commenced." As he spoke, I heard it, a low humming in the walls, like a swarm of insects or distant chanting. "Come," he said, dragging me down the stairs. "It's time you met your true mistress." The basement had transformed. Candles now lined the altar, their flames unnaturally still. The symbols on the walls pulsed with faint blue light. As James dragged me toward the altar, survival instinct finally kicked through my terror. I twisted violently, slamming the heavy journal into his face. His grip loosened just enough for me to break free. "Stupid girl," he snarled, his voice no longer human. "You cannot escape what has been centuries in making." I scrambled behind a pillar, mind racing. The journal. There had to be something useful in it. I flipped frantically through pages, scanning for anything that might help me. There, in a margin note, the binding symbols must remain unbroken for Lilith's manifestation. The circles on the floor, if I could disrupt them. A cold wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing half the candles. In the darkness, something stirred, a shadowy form taking shape near the altar, feminine yet wrong, like a body assembled by someone who'd only read descriptions of humans. James turned toward it, arms outstretched in reverence. "She comes," he whispered. "My eternal bride awakens." That moment of distraction was all I needed. I grabbed a ceremonial dagger from a nearby table and lunged forward, scraping it across the chalk lines on the floor. The effect was immediate. A shriek that existed somewhere between sound and thought tore through the room. The shadowy figure convulsed. "No!" James roared, lunging for me. But something unexpected happened. The disrupted ritual created a feedback, and I felt a presence enter my mind. "Help me," a woman's voice whispered inside my thoughts. "I am trapped as you soon will be." The voice was desperate, ancient, and unmistakably human. This wasn't a demon speaking to me. It was Lilith herself, and she was a prisoner too. "Take the dagger," Lilith's voice urged inside my head, "the ceremonial blade. It's the only way to end this." James lunged toward me, his form shifting between human and something ancient, grotesque. I rolled across the floor, fingers closing around the ornate dagger. The metal burned cold against my skin, symbols along its blade glowing with the same blue light as the walls. "You don't understand what you're doing," James hissed, circling me. "She's deceiving you. She's the demon, not me." "He bound me centuries ago," Lilith's voice whispered. "I was his wife, his first victim. When I discovered his pact with darkness, he used the ritual to trap my soul instead of letting me expose him." The shadowy figure by the altar was clearer now. A woman in agony, her form constantly shifting and dissolving, trying to take solid shape. I saw my own features in her face, distorted by centuries of pain. "Each sacrifice," she spoke aloud now, her voice cracking with disuse. "Each woman who looks like me, he uses them to keep me bound and to feed his own immortality." James roared, lunging at me with inhuman speed. Something primitive took over my body. I ducked under his grasp and thrust upward with the dagger. The blade sank into his chest with surprising ease, as if it had been crafted specifically for this purpose. His eyes widened in shock. You can't." Blood, black and thick like oil, seeped around the blade. "It's over," I whispered. His laughter started soft, then grew maniacal. "Foolish child, you've only freed me from my human form." His body began to collapse inward, the skin sloughing away. "And now the true master comes. I was just the servant, the gatekeeper." The basement walls cracked, dark ichors seeping through. The house above groaned like a living thing in pain. "What have I done?" I gasped. "What we needed you to do," Lilith answered. "Now run." The house was coming apart at the seams. Walls buckled, floorboards split, and a terrible howling echoed through every room. I raced up the basement stairs, no longer locked. The ritual's completion had broken the supernatural seal. Behind me, darkness boiled up from where James had fallen, something vast and shapeless taking form. "The boundary line," Lilith's voice guided me. "You must reach the property line. Its power can't extend beyond." I sprinted through the disintegrating house, dodging falling beams and shattering glass. Outside, the night sky had turned blood red, the eclipse in full effect. The driveway stretched endlessly before me, trees on either side bending inward, as if trying to block my path. The thing that had been summoned crashed through the house behind me. I didn't look back. I knew instinctively that seeing its true form would destroy my mind. Its presence alone made the air heavy, reality itself seeming to warp around it. The journal, Lilith urged. The protection ritual. It's our only chance. I still clutched the journal, pages flipping wildly in the unnatural wind. There, scrawled in the margins, a banishing ritual requiring blood freely given and a soul to anchor it. My fingers found the dagger still in my hand. James's black blood now dried on its blade. The property gate was just ahead, stone pillars marking the boundary. I skidded to a stop, feeling the creature closing in. With one swift motion, I drew the blade across my palm, letting blood drip onto the ground as I recited the words from the journal. Ancient syllables that burned my tongue, a language never meant for human speech. "Allow me in," Lilith pleaded, "just enough to complete the ritual. A fragment of my essence joined with yours." I hesitated for only a moment before agreeing. Immediately, I felt her presence flow through me, centuries of rage, sorrow, and finally hope. Together, we finished the incantation as the darkness reached for us. A blinding flash erupted at the boundary line. The creature screamed, a sound of such profound hatred and frustration that the earth itself seemed to tremble. Then silence fell, heavy and complete. I stood alone on the road, the house behind me now just a smoldering crater. But I wasn't truly alone anymore. I could feel Lilith's consciousness merge with mine, not possessing, but coexisting. Her knowledge, her power, her centuries of watching similar evil prey on innocent victims. 6 months later, I sat in a coffee shop watching a scene unfold that was hauntingly familiar. A charming man with a too-perfect smile offering his handkerchief to a young woman caught in the rain. His eyes held that same hunger I now recognized, the same predatory patience. I felt my eyes shift, Lilith's power momentarily surging as I stood and moved toward them. The man sensed something, looking up sharply as I approached. Recognition and impossible fear flashed across his face. "Mind if I join you?" I asked, sliding into the booth beside the confused woman. "I have quite a story to tell you about your new friend here." The hunt had begun. I'm not the same person who fell for James's lies. Now I hunt the predators hiding in plain sight. If my story resonated with you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, not all monsters have fangs and claws. Sometimes they bring you flowers and whisper sweet nothings. Stay vigilant. I'll be back next week with another true horror from my new life. Until then, sleep tight, if you can.